Hours na lang actually. It's happening, I think, if I'm not mistaken, karong Sabado sa that Laylam football field um, in Banilad. Atong tak na karon, alas 10:55 na sa Kabun Tagud. Welcome to Top of the Morning. Kung bago na mo naminaw, daghang salamat sa iyong pagpaminaw. I'm your host. My name is Jiggy Juice. The radio personality formerly known as Jiggy Jr.
Why are you crying again?
I'm not crying. And of course, you can call me Jiggy Juice now. So that's my new name now in case you'll run into me. I've been Jiggy Jr. for about 3 decades. Now, of course, you can call me Jiggy Juice. Akong gi-shed off. Ang akong junior kay medyo ni tiguang-tiguang naman tagamay. So wala na junior. Juice na ang ipulyan ako. And coming up in a few moments, we have a very special exclusive interview from somebody who was able to crack the code on how to get into the Ivy League in the United States. In fact, Samantha Cerna was able to get in Brown University. And we're going to have a chance to talk to her in a few moments. In fact, I think she's ready on the other line. Let's try to see if we can put her on the air. Good morning, Samantha.
Good morning, Tito. How are you?
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. It's not morning here quite.
Oh, my
but
goodness. My
It's
goodness.
morning for you over there.
Where are you exactly? What's your location, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I'm in Las Vegas right now.
Oh.
It's about 8 p.m. here.
Wow, Las Vegas. 8 p.m. at Las Vegas.
Mhm.
So how are you feeling this morning? This evening, I should say. It's morning here. It's 11 a.m. here in the Philippines, in these beautiful islands of the Philippines. And it's 8 p.m. there in Las Vegas. How do you feel about the kind of time differential that we have and where you are right now? Is it cold there in Vegas right now?
It's actually not cold here. Vegas is, I think it's hotter than the Philippines,
Oh my
but it's
God.
not as humid as the Philippines.
Oh
So
my
it feels
goodness.
better here. I prefer it here, but it's so hot here. The sun is just now going down, actually. It's been bright for a while.
Oh my goodness.
And it's summer though, so it's fun.
The last time you were here in the Philippines, how long ago was that?
I think it was before COVID.
Oh my God, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, we went for New Year's when I was in middle school, so
Yeah.
maybe 4 years ago.
4 years ago. That's a mighty long
Mm,
time, right? So much has
hmm
happened post-pandemic. I can imagine that the same is true for you. So many things have changed, and the way we look at the world is so much more different now than before the pandemic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like over here, I remember we were so scared that we were never going to be able to travel back there after COVID because we didn't know what travel was going to look like. But Lolo and Lola really want me to go back, so we have to go back sometime soon.
Yes, please. In fact, I'm sure your Lolo and Lola here in Cebu is watching this interview right now, and so proud of you, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much. Hi Lola, hi Lola.
You know what? When I first found out, and when I spoke to you and your dad, I was a bit surprised that it would cost so much to get into an Ivy League uh, in the United States, right? Because here in the Philippines, if you want to get into a not an Ivy League, but the top schools where we are in the region in the Philippines, it is usually a very minimal cost just to enter, right? So I'm curious, what are the mechanics like? Like, how does it work in the United States? If you want to get into an Ivy League, what are the first few steps an individual has to go through, and what are the potential costs?
Right. So similar to the Philippines, our parents always tell us get good grades and you'll get into a good school. And that's really important here too. You do have to get good grades, but from the application cost can be anywhere from $50 to $100 per school alone. And then a lot of kids here in the States get what's called a college counselor, which can be, hundreds of dollars an hour, tens of thousands of dollars a year, because it's so competitive here. You're competing not only within the United States, but internationally too. So grades alone aren't enough to get you into college. So a lot of people get counselors to make their applications look better. They recommend extracurriculars to do. They recommend different things to put on their application to make them stand out. And these people can be, they can be anyone. They can be somebody who's gone through the process themselves. They can be people who used to be admissions officers, like the people who review applications. And that expertise costs a lot here. It's very expensive to get a good shot at going to an Ivy League school. No guarantee even, just to get a good shot at going there.
Before I ask you the next question, I should probably ask you this first. There's so much distraction. There's so much news and so much, how do we call this? Interesting vibrations happening from the Ivy Leagues in the United States. And there is an impression that the schools in the United States, the academia, is under attack, right? Tell me about that situation. What is going over there, and what should we think of that here in the Philippines, or maybe even all over the world outside of the United States? What is really going on out there as far as the educational, how do you call it, pot steering is concerned?
Right. So education is so important. And I think in the US, we've made a big deal about education being free from like the government imposing on it, right? So you want to be able to research, you want to be able to learn in an environment that's free of, like people trying to censor things.
Hmm.
And, learning doesn't really work if you can't learn freely. And so, it's definitely debatable. Some people will say that education is under attack, for example. Some people will say that it's just stronger regulations to make education better.
Hmm.
But regardless of which way you sway politically, it's very important that education is free here in the US. So my school, for example, Brown and another one of the Ivy Leagues, Columbia, they've recently struck in deals with the US government regarding things like diversity and different sports regulations. And so hopefully that won't change too much of how we perceive education here and how free we can say that it is. I'm not too sure yet because the deals were, we just had the deals go through, and there's definitely been a lot of turmoil and a lot of things are going to change. So we'll have to see. But I really hope that we're able to maintain, free education, regardless of how you sway politically, because we want to have those open conversations. Those are so important, especially in higher education.
So, what were your challenges in applying as a first-gen American? Of course, you have very Cebuano Filipino roots, but what were your challenges in applying?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, my dad came here in his 20s, so he never really went through applying to undergraduate colleges here in the States, neither did my mom. So I was kind of flying blind almost. They told me to get good grades, so I got good grades my whole life. I got good test scores my whole life, but there's so much more to that here in the States that I just didn't know. So I had to navigate a lot by myself. I was on the internet a lot, on different forums, like looking up what the best way to get into these top schools is. I actually had a lot of friends who had college counselors themselves. And so I would ask them questions and I would take the information that they had because it was so valuable. They're paying for it, might as well steal some of theirs. But yeah, it was very, very complicated. And so I think I spent more time honestly figuring out how to apply to college than applying to college itself.
Wow. You mentioned that this is not just for those that are there in the United States. It could be anyone, anywhere in the world. In fact, that's how competitive it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I'm curious, what does the timeline look like, and how long did you have to spend applying? And I want you to be able to give us a kind of context because, of course, you're obviously there. You're a first generation your dad, my brother is from the Philippines, from Cebu, and he eventually migrated there in his 20s, like you said, right? But give us an idea for those that have the same situation as you, first generation American, and to those who are also uh, listening to this broadcast, watching this interview from another country, maybe from the Philippines, maybe from Cebu, and they'd also like to get in to the Ivy League. Give us a sense. I'm sure you won't be able to give us any exact numbers because nothing about this is exact. Just like a kind of ballpark figure. Go ahead, Samantha.
Absolutely. So, about 4 years out before I applied to college, that would be the beginning of high school here in the States. I started really focusing on my grades, my test scores, my extracurriculars, especially different clubs, things like student council, student government, different things that you can join to be more involved at your school. I definitely started joining those because I knew that they would eventually help me and, build my resume just in general sometime down the line. And then throughout high school, I thought about the different schools that I wanted to go to. I never made like a comprehensive list until honestly the summer before I applied. But I definitely had an idea of the kind of schools I wanted to go to. It was very important to me that they were strong academically. I didn't care too much about sports. I wanted a very like humanities focused education. So those were things that were important to me. And then I came up with a list. And then the summer before my last year of high school is when I really started looking at the application, trying to figure out all of the things I needed. You need letters of recommendation from teachers or counselors, different adults that know you well. I started building like a resume for that kind of thing, started taking inventory of all the things that I have done in my life, and seeing
Wow.
what like,
Must be hard,
yeah,
huh?
what made sense. Yeah, absolutely. It I definitely had to think very deeply about why I was doing the things I was doing and what made sense to put on my application. And then I started writing essays on essays on essays. Like, let me tell you, if you're not a good writer, college applications are so hard.
Okay. When you say
Um,
essay, what does that exactly mean? And do they pick the topic or you pick the topic?
so it's a little bit of a mix of both. You write a personal statement, which is a very general essay. It's like 650 words. It goes to all the schools you apply to, and you get to pick the prompt, and it basically discusses like what makes you you, what
Hmm.
challenges have you overcome, what like how have you grown as a person over the last few years, that kind of thing. And then depending on what school you're applying to, they also do supplemental essays, which are a little bit shorter. And those topics are picked by the school. For example, like why this school? Why do you want to go to this school? Why do you want to choose this major? And usually that's to get a better sense of not who you are as a person, but how you would fit in whatever school you're applying to.
When you say essay, what are they looking for? What are the Ivy Leagues looking for? Are they looking for the way you have a grasp of the English language? Are you looking at your writing skills? Or are you looking at the contents of your life?
Yeah, so obviously your grasp of the English language and your proficiency is important, but I wouldn't say it's the key thing. You could have excellent grammar, excellent spelling, your English could be perfect, but
AI?
it has to, yeah, oh, don't even get me started.
Okay,
They were
please.
so AI is a big
Yeah.
thing. Um, but actually, they don't want an essay, AI essay, because they want you to be human.
Okay.
They want to get to know you, know your personality,
What does that even mean,
and
right?
kind of,
What does
right, yeah,
what does it mean to be human, right?
you're right.
That's
That's what
another conversation. But go ahead, continue, please. Sorry.
people pay thousands of dollars to figure that out, and
Yeah,
they
yeah.
still don't. So, um, but yeah, they want to know who you are, and they want you. It's almost like a pitch. You're selling yourself to the
Mm.
school. Yeah,
So
because
pretty
grades are
much
the
it's pretty much the essay is a pitch why they should accept you in their school. So what are the strategies that you did use in applying? Like maybe we can talk strategy. How did you strategize, and did you start from the get go, from the very beginning, or early on, years before the actual application process is concerned, or did you just start straight out of high school?
Yeah. So I obviously always knew I wanted to go to college. So I did a
Okay.
lot of things that boosted my resume, which helped in the long
Okay.
end.
Okay.
But I didn't really think about it until just before I applied.
Okay.
Um, but the idea is to figure out, everybody has a story,
Okay.
and you have to figure out what your story is.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I want to go into healthcare in the future. I'm majoring in public health. And so, coming from a Filipino American background, there's higher incidences of diabetes and heart disease. That's something that I wove into my application. Being Filipino, being surrounded by nurses,
Mm-hmm.
and learning my love for healthcare through that. That's
Mm-hmm.
something that I put in my application. And then not only that from like the beginning of my life, but then how that evolved later on into my life in joining clubs that were healthcare related, volunteering, and doing things like that. It's about how you found a passion and like you grew into that across the years. And I think that's how a lot of kids should go about it because it shows, how dedicated you are. And it shows that you're serious about like pursuing this in the future.
So, what are the strategies for getting into actual schools now? In case you're wondering, hold that thought for a while. In case you're wondering what you're listening to, or who you're listening to Top of the Morning. I'm your host. My name is Jiggy Juice, and somebody has figured out a way to get into the Ivy League for a fraction of the cost. Her name is Samantha Cerna. She's actually live from Las Vegas. And if you have some questions, please feel free to throw them to her, 0999-887-6070. You can comment your questions on our Facebook page, Tops Media Center, on YouTube, Tops Media Center, also on TikTok, Tops Media Center. So, Samantha, what are the strategies for getting into schools?
There are a ton. So, it's about your application is the most important thing. You want to make sure that you craft an application that is not only representative of who you are, but you also want to study up a little bit on the school that you're applying to and study up on what they want to see in a student and kind of tailor your application to fit that. For example, I was applying to a very heavy like humanities and like liberal arts school. So I made sure my application was focused on, humanities and philosophy and, thinking about like my role, like my passions and what I want to do in life and that sort of thing. So you want to tailor your application to schools. You also want to make sure that your grades are good. That's something that like kind of you just have to bite the bullet and do that.
Mm-hmm.
And we have in the States a lot of standardized testing like SAT and ACT. And so one big thing for that is you want to make sure you take those early because you can retake those until you get a score that you want. So there's a lot of little components that go into it. I wouldn't say there's one strategy that got me in or anything, but it's a very you got to take a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. As a Filipino, our perception is that American colleges are super expensive. It's like an impossible dream for most Filipinos. Are there ways to make it less expensive?
Absolutely. And I thought the exact same thing. And don't get me wrong, it is very expensive here. But a lot of, especially the private schools, offer a lot of financial aid that's need-based. So based on your parents' income, how much they project that you will be able to pay, they cover the rest of your tuition for that. So, for example, Harvard doesn't charge you any tuition if your parents make under 100,000. Stanford doesn't charge you any tuition if your parents make under 150,000. And even if they're not fully covering your tuition, for example, I got like a 50% discount on my tuition just because of how much my parents make. So it's based on your ability to pay for school because they want to make it something that's accessible to different kinds of students. And schools want to have a diverse student body from the upper class to middle class to lower class. So they want to make it accessible for all types of people to go there. And aside from that, you can get a ton of different scholarships through like clubs you join, through a lot of big companies do it, like Dell and Coca-Cola, through academics, there's even like scholarships that are aimed at like Filipino kids. And these scholarships can be, tens of thousands of dollars. They can be $1,000. They can be $500. But no matter what, it's important that you apply to all of these scholarships because they do absolutely add up. And the money is out there. It's just a matter of figuring out how to get it.
The money is out there. It's just a matter of figuring out, meaning you figured out, you, Samantha Cerna, tried to figure it out
Mhm.
how to get there. If you could do it all over again, out of all the things that you've done step by step, what would you have changed?
That's a good question. I honestly don't think I would change anything. I think it was brutal. It was so hard. I spent so many like sleepless nights trying to figure out how to even begin working on an application. But I think that I also learned a lot through that. And I was very lucky to be in the position where I knew people who had college counselors. I knew people who have parents who've applied to schools like this before. And so I also got very lucky. This is a lot of the reason why, if you check the description, I think, is it in there? I created like a little slideshow, a very comprehensive, like look at applying to college. It's basic, but it has a lot of the information that I wish I just had from the get-go. If anybody is thinking about applying to college in the States, it's a great resource. It has a lot of information that I just think everybody should know, but isn't common knowledge.
Yeah, in case you're wondering what Samantha Cerna is talking about, she's talking about the slideshow that we will be posting after this exclusive interview with her. So stay tuned. Okay, just be on the lookout for it on our official Facebook page, Tops Media Center, and the website, and also on our social media platforms. Also for mine, I'll also be posting it on my personal page, Jiggy Juice. You mentioned college advisor. Is that what you said? College counselor, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
What does that mean? I mean, like, I'm not so familiar with a college counselor. I don't remember ever speaking to one when I was in college. What is that?
Yeah, so as schools became more competitive, parents started hiring people to help their kids get into these schools.
Ah, okay,
So
okay.
yeah, they can do anything from, just helping kids meet deadlines on essays and stuff to polishing essays, editing them, um, linking, like connecting them with financial aid resources and different types of schools that the counselor might think that they'd be interested in. And just like creating kind of that story that I was talking about, that holistic application that gets you into these schools.
A holistic application to
Mhm.
give you a fighting chance, right? To get you into these Ivy League schools, like the ones that you were able to get in, which is Brown University. I'm gonna go and ask you about why you chose Brown University out of all the schools, um, but that's coming up in a few moments. But before that, what if they need more help? What if the applicant wants more help? Where should they go? Is there like a place that they can go to, a person that they can talk to? Maybe you, perhaps.
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned before, I toughed it out and I got through it just barely. But if you don't want to do that and you need a little bit more help, meeting those deadlines, polishing those essays, creating, this story, that's something that I've done before and I'd love to help anybody else who needs it do. I charge a fraction of what these expensive college counselors pay because it's something that's very important to me because I feel like education should just be accessible to everybody. And
Hmm.
I think it sucks that it's so hard to get into a good school, even if you are smart and you have the capability to succeed there. Especially as, Filipinos, as immigrants, people who are coming here and don't have the generational knowledge of the American education system. That's something that I'd love to help anybody out with. And if they need any more help, they should totally contact me because it's something that I'm very, very passionate about and I'd love to do.
Okay, you finally got into Brown University. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Samantha. You're making us, not just your family, so proud here in the Philippines, but the entire nation is so proud of what you've accomplished because I know you had to go through a lot to be able to get into Brown University. But why Brown University? Out of all the schools that you applied in, why did you choose Brown University?
Well, obviously, especially here, Brown University, the name carries a lot of weight. It's a very prestigious school, and a lot of people who are going to do great things go there. So it's a great place to network and make connections with future CEOs and future presidents. And um, academically, it's also a very, very strong school. A major reason that I chose it, as I mentioned before, was it's a liberal arts school. So there's a huge focus on like humanities and ethics and philosophy and kind of they integrate science into a lot of their courses, but they also keep that very human aspect. And that's something that I just personally think is very important and I wanted to see in my education. So there's a lot of different reasons why I think it was the best fit for me.
I don't know if you'd be okay with this, but we'd like to discuss the slides that you sent us. Is that okay? And maybe we can
Yeah,
play the slides while you're sort of describing them. But before
absolutely.
before we get to that, I'll give time for our back end people. Not let's not call him back end people. Ralph, he's an actual person. We'll take care of the
Oh,
back
hi, Ralph.
the slide show. But before that, let me ask this question first. I think I need to premise and contextualize everything with this question. What's a good school? What does that even mean? What's when you say Ivy League? You know, we have supposedly good schools here in the Philippines too, right? So, what is a good school? What does that mean?
A good school, I think, depends on the person. Um, you know, there are a lot of what people regard as good schools are schools with a lot of like prestige, those schools that like you hear and you know it
Yeah,
for their
yeah,
academics
yeah.
and all those things. But to a lot of people, that's not important to them, you
Okay.
know? You don't have to go to an Ivy League school to be successful. I
Yeah.
think you have to go to the school where you're best fit.
Okay.
Um, and like for example, my best friend, she's going to Georgetown in Washington, D.C., our capital. And that's not an Ivy League school. It's a very prestigious school, but it's not an Ivy League school. But she went there because she wants to go into politics, and it's in D.C. It's right in the capital. You know, the location's perfect. Um, Another one of my friends is going to a school off the coast. He wants to study marine biology. So it makes sense that he's close to the ocean, you know? It depends on what the school you want to go to focuses on. It depends on what you want to do in life. So I don't think you can consider anything a generally good school. I think it definitely depends on who you are and what your goals are.
So that's depending on the person and how they define what a good school is. So obviously, Brown University is an Ivy League school. Describe to us Brown University. Like, if you had to pitch to the world, to the Filipino watching this podcast and this radio show, what will you tell them? What is Brown University? Please introduce University to us.
Well, I could talk about Brown University for so long. It's
We have
this
all day. We have all
little
day.
It's this liberal arts school in Rhode Island, which is on the east coast of the US. It's in a little town called Providence. It's a very quaint town. It's a very college town. It's very like walkable, which is something we're not very used to over in Vegas. And they are a top tier school in terms of academics. When you think Ivy League, think like Harvard, like Columbia, Yale. It's one of those schools that's very focused on academics. Um, and they're a very big research school. They do a ton of research in public health and, business. And they are one of the only Ivy Leagues actually that has a very big like undergraduate program. So for students getting their bachelor's degree, it's very, very helpful because they focus a lot more on kids who are getting their bachelor's degree, as opposed to like master's, doctorate, law, which I think is super important because undergrad kids get a lot of the different opportunities like research and like teaching, and things like that.
Wow. You mentioned research. That's one of the many things that uh, a lot of our Philippine educational institutions, and we here in the Philippines, don't do much, or at least there's a perception that there's no. We just follow and use other universities from outside of the Philippines research material and apply it to our own, which is kind of not so good because whatever works in the United States or other parts of the world doesn't necessarily apply here in the Philippines. Maybe the question should be: tell us about how research is a huge part of Ivy Leagues, including Brown University.
Yeah, as you mentioned, research is so important. And here in the States, a lot of our research is actually done by different universities. So anything from, there's STEM, there's sciencey things where they study Alzheimer's and like brain disease and neuroscience and things like that, to things like very businessy things like employment statistics and like how different changes in the economy affect like the state of Rhode Island, the city of Providence, the East Coast. Like they do a lot of research on different scales, and they do a lot of local research, local to the city that Brown is located in. So it's a great way to not only like gain experience in research, but also just learn a lot more about the world. Because that's what school is for. It's to learn about the world and learn about these different subjects. And a great way to do that is through discovering it by doing your own research.
Doing your own research, and I'm sure you've done your own research in your time at UNLV, right? Tell us about your research. What did you need to know? What information did you want to learn about the world in your previous research? Go ahead.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I am very like medicine focused. It's what I want
Okay.
to do with my future. I want to go into healthcare.
Okay.
And so back home here in Vegas, the University of Las Vegas, I had the opportunity to work with the neuroscience lab here, and I actually researched,
Neuroscience. You
yes,
just said neuroscience.
neuroscience.
Wow.
Yeah. It wasn't in humans, so it was on little mice. And we looked at the effects of um hyperglycemia, so like type 2 diabetes on Alzheimer's progression. And we
Oh,
actually found a very like strong link between that. And we were kind of investigating how like the mechanisms behind how that happens.
so the relation between Alzheimer's and type 2 diabetes, right? So what did you find out?
Mhm. So we found out that there is a very strong link, mostly due to inflammation. So um, when you have type 2 diabetes, the amount of like sugar you get is very variable throughout the day. You have like low sugar spikes, high sugar spikes, and that stresses your nervous system out a lot.
Hmm.
So when that happens, your brain tissue becomes inflamed. There are different like little pathologies that happen that slow your cognitive function. They disrupt like neural connections in your brain, and things like that. And so what our research aimed to do was to figure out exactly what like proteins and what links that happen through, so that we'd be able to better target it in like drug use and stuff like that.
Just like getting into Ivy League and top schools all over the world, um, there is a perception that research is also very expensive and it costs a lot. That's why here in the Philippines, most of us just use other nations' research as data, and we just try to map it into our own a set of data. So, is that true, or is it also just like getting into Ivy League? It's also just a perception.
Well, research is very expensive, especially here in the United States and at Brown particularly. We're very lucky because a lot of our research was funded federally, and we have a lot of ways to fund research. But everything from like the equipment we use to paying scientists to everything like that is very expensive because you're not necessarily always making a profit off of it. So we work a lot off of like grants and things like that. And it's reliant upon people wanting like to learn about this information to make um, a better world in the future, even if it doesn't necessarily directly benefit them.
So, in the university context, um, i- is it also like I'm kind of confused when you say research in the university academic level and research out there in a, I don't know if this is appropriate word, the professional level. Are they one and the same, or is the university research uh, 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 less less important, if you will, compared to, let's just say, a professional research done by a company, or maybe by an institution, or a group of scientists? Can you give us a distinction, please? Because I'm kind of confused.
Absolutely. A lot of people do think that one is better than the other. For
Okay.
example, like universities aren't as important research as something like the WHO, the CDC,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
these like government organizations who
yeah,
collect a lot of this data.
yeah.
But actually, a lot of researchers and professors are people who have gotten like PhDs
Mm.
in this field, and a lot of them do work at universities just so that they can research.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, so it's people from all different levels of expertise, from like undergrad, like college students like me, to people with master's degrees, to people with doctorate degrees. There's definitely a lot of expertise involved in university research, and I think it's incredibly credible, just as much as something from a different
So,
organization.
and the academic research, is it also well funded, or is it just self funded if you have a research as part of your curriculum?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. Schools will fund a little bit of research, but schools also rely a lot on government grants
Okay.
and federal funding for things like that.
Okay. You mentioned that your kind of field is neuroscience, right? And I remember one of my all-time favorite neuroscientists, Sam Harris. He mentioned that the brain is the final frontier. Like there's so much that we know about the human body except for the brain, right? So why did you choose easily the most complicated organ of the human being?
I think it's just that. I think we know so much about other parts of the body, and while there's still so much to learn about them, the brain is by far the most interesting. Like it's like the ocean, like there are a ton of different like creatures out there and a ton of different things that could come up in the next few years. And it's definitely one of the most like cutting edge fields of medicine. It's something that I think that I have the potential to do a lot in and go very far in, and discover a lot in. And I just think that the brain is a very interesting thing because you don't necessarily see all of it happen. For example, like in the heart, you see the blood, you see the different chambers pumping through. But in the brain, it all looks the same.
Yeah.
So you have to look on a very like molecular level, and it takes a lot more like complicated science to understand the mechanisms behind the brain.
Hmm.
And it can be so variable between person to person. And so I think that it's one of those things that is so hard to understand. And maybe we never will truly fully understand it, but I'd like to try.
You'd like to try. Samantha Cerna would like to try understanding the human brain and all of its complexities. What is it about the brain that you, Samantha Cerna, would like to understand? Because, like I said, there's so much that we don't understand. There must be like a specific thing that you'd like to understand about it. If you had to choose one thing, what would it be?
Yeah, so a lot of my research background is in Alzheimer's disease, and I
Okay.
think that's for a great reason
Okay.
because it's so poorly understood, and especially the connection with it and gender. Um, there are a lot of studies that have been shown that estrogen acts as like a protectant to getting dementia and those things. And it's very interesting to me to find out like the mechanisms behind why that's happened. And diabetes as well, like I've already researched. We understand that it makes you more likely to get Alzheimer's, to get dementia, but we don't know how. And so what good is that if we're trying to treat it,
Hmm.
right? So it's that kind of like treatment and that connection between different kinds of diseases and Alzheimer's is something that's very, very interesting to me,
Hmm.
especially how we can use it in drugs and treatments for to actually help people like in the real world.
Hmm. Wow. So that narrow and very specific area of neuro science or the brain is the specific thing that you'd like to perhaps learn more one day when you start school at Brown University. When does your school year start, by the way?
So I actually move out in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
I move out the 19th, and then I have a couple of like pre-orientation and orientation programs, and my school officially starts on September 1st.
September 1st is your official first day of school. How do you feel about
Yes.
your first day at Brown University?
I'm excited. It's something that I've been dreaming about for, the past, how old am I? 18 years. So I hope that it doesn't disappoint. It's gonna be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to just meet all of the people there. It's a place where people come from far and wide to be. So I'm very excited to meet people from all different kinds of backgrounds.
There'll be a lot of people watching this podcast and are not American citizens, or maybe they are. So at least they will have a sort of an easier route because they're already there or they're already American citizens. What if I'm watching this interview or listening to this on the radio and I'm a Filipina, and want to get into an Ivy League university in the United States? Will it be twice as hard, or what? Give us a sense of what it takes if I am not a citizen yet.
Yeah, I don't think that should stop you at all from applying and, going for your dream schools if they're in the States.
Okay.
One special thing about Brown is, and a lot of schools, is that they want a diverse student body. They want people from all different kinds of backgrounds.
Hmm.
And Brown actually has one of the highest acceptance rates of international
Oh,
students.
okay.
Yeah, because it makes their campus a lot more enriching, for everybody
Okay.
to meet people from a bunch of different backgrounds. So I think, if anything, being a Philippine citizen living in the Philippines is
Hmm.
something that enriches your application. It doesn't hinder it.
So Samantha, I think Ron is ready. You have created for us. You're so kind to provide to us a slide on how to get into Ivy League college, just Ivy League colleges in the United States. Ralph, let's start the slide, please. Thank you. In case you're wondering who you're listening to Samantha Cerna. She has cracked the code on how to get into an Ivy League university in the United States. If you have any questions, please feel free to post on our socials, on our Facebook page, Tops Media Center, on YouTube. Please press subscribe, Tops Media Center, and also on TikTok, Tops Media Center. Or you can just simply text us. Kung nara mo diri sa siyudad sa Sugbo or sa Pilipinas, na minaw na to sa ubang lugar sa Pilipinas, sa Bohol, sa Tagbilaran, sa Negros, and so on and so forth. Text 0999-887-6070. So here is your college Ivy League applications 101. Roll the slide, please. Go ahead. Ron? Okay, there we go.
There we go. Cool. Yeah. So, how do you apply? As I mentioned here, it definitely depends on the school. There's Common App, which is kind of just like a general application. It sends it to a bunch of different schools, and that's how I applied actually. It's a lot easier to do it that way because you need to collect so many different like statistics about yourself, and put in your extracurriculars and things, and supplemental essays and stuff like that. So it's a good application to use to apply to a bunch of different schools. But there are some schools that don't use the Common App. A lot of schools in California, for example, don't because they have their own application. So you make sure to check the university website to see how you should be applying. But I would say if they're on Common App, use Common App. And if you are low income, for example, QuestBridge, if you make under $65,000 a year for your family, it's a great option for low income students. They do like a matching system with different universities, especially like Ivy Leagues, very like prestigious schools. Um, and you are only matched to one school, I believe. But it's a very good option because you can get a very discounted rate on your tuition. And if cost is a barrier for you, QuestBridge is a great tool. We also have fee waivers that are available for a lot of students. It depends on your school and your school district, but usually if your district approves you for like SAT, ACT waivers for standardized testing and things like that, they'll approve you for a fee waiver too. So you don't even have to apply for like the $50. You don't have to pay for the $50 application, which can save you a lot and allow you to apply to more schools.
Next slide, please. Maayong buntag sa ato mga kaigsunan nga naminaw nato sa social media. Daghang salamat sa inyong pagtanaw. Si Ray de la Serna. Somebody is asking if you're the son of Stephen, and I told him no, you're the sister of Stephen. Yes, go ahead, continue, please. Next slide.
Um, okay, and then for early versus regular, there are a ton of different ways to apply to college. Schools have different like application cycles, so it very much depends. But a lot of schools do early decision and early action. So early decision, you submit it. If you get in, it's binding. So if you get in, you are committed to going to that school. That's how I applied to Brown. This shows like a stronger level of commitment, and it really shows the school that you want to be there. And then early action is also just submitted earlier. Usually, if you apply early, you have a higher chance of getting in. The acceptance rates are usually higher for applying early because you show that commitment, you show that you really want to be there. And if you apply early action and you get deferred, you can get deferred to regular decision. So you can apply, they can say, like maybe we don't really know if we want you, we're not sure yet. They can defer you to regular decision, and then you can go and be in that application cycle and try again. And there are obviously different types of early applications beyond that, but they're pretty similar to early decision and early action. They're the main categories. And then there's also regular decision. These are typically due in the winter, so you have a little bit more time to complete these applications. Um, and yeah, it's very similar to just like regular, like early action. You apply and then you're not committed to getting in. If you get in, you can still choose between all the different schools that you get into. And then there's also rolling admissions, which are, I know that the University of Nevada, Las Vegas is a rolling decision. A lot of the smaller schools are. So as you apply, they review your applications, and then um, they will let you know if you got in like on a rolling basis. So it depends. You get your like results like a few months after you apply. It just depends.
Okay, next slide, please. In case you're wondering
Awesome. And then so
who you're listening to, you're listening to Samantha Cerna. She actually cracked the code on how to get into Ivy League universities, specifically Brown University, at a fraction of the cost. Go ahead, next slide. Thank you.
great. So moving on to personal statements. These are general essays that are sent to all the schools that you apply to. As I mentioned before, it's around 650 words. It's meant to kind of get like a basis of who you are, get to know you kind of thing. What kind of challenges have you faced in your life? How have you attacked those? What accomplishments have you faced? Like, have you gotten? How did you feel about those? And then there are also supplemental essays, which are more specific to the school. Each school has their own set of supplemental essays that they'll have you write. And a lot of those essays are like, why this school, or like, why this major? There are things that are more specific to what they're looking for in a student, what they want. And these are usually a little bit shorter than personal statements. So when you apply, you're going to have to write quite a few essays depending on what school you go to.
Okay, next slide, please.
Awesome. And then letters of recommendation are also very important. It's important to have a strong relationship with, teachers or counselors or those people throughout your education, so that when it comes time to write letters of recommendation, they can write you glowing recommendations. So I would make sure that you ask for these as early as possible, like when you know your schools, ask for them, because teachers often get very busy writing letters of recommendation for a ton of kids. And you want to make sure that they have the information they need to write a good recommendation. So while you think that like teachers know you, your counselors know you, they oversee a ton of kids. So you want to make sure that you send them your transcript, and you send them like a brag sheet or like a resume with a ton of different like extracurriculars and like all the points that you want them to hit, all of your accomplishments that you're proud of, to make sure that those all make it into the letter of recommendation. And you want to make sure that you set a deadline for them, because usually these letters are due when your application is due. So you want to make sure that you're not like hunting them down at the end of it, to make sure you submit your application on time. Good, next slide, please. Well, and then for in terms of financial aid, there are a ton of different ways that you can make college cheaper. Like my school is $90,000 a year, but I don't pay anywhere near $90,000 a year for school. And it's important to fill out a couple applications, though, to make sure that you are going to be considered for that aid. So here in the United States, if you're a citizen, you can fill out the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. And that helps you qualify for financial grants from the federal government. And the possibility of getting like different loans out and things like that to help you pay from school. And those usually have like lower interest rates. They're a lot better than taking out like private loans. And then there also is something called the College Scholarship Service, or CSS profile, which is run through College Board, which is the same company that runs like AP classes, SATs, and things like that. And this is what a lot of schools use for institutional aid. So that's aid that comes directly from the school. You'll fill out that profile with both of these ask for like your parents' income information, any assets you have, your income information. It's very, very extensive. So I would set aside a couple of days to fill both of these out. But the CSS profile sends that information to your school, and then they use that. If they do like need-based financial aid, they use that to determine how much aid that they'll give you. Next slide, please. Perfect. And then, as I mentioned before, this is a very like bare bones stuff I think you should know just going into applying to college. But if you have any more like specific questions, if there's anything else you want to know, if you want help with like writing essays or help trying to figure out what you should write about, it's a lot to think about. So if you want anything more in depth, more personal advising, my email is right there on the slide. If you'd like to contact me, I'd be happy to help you out.
I have more questions.
Absolutely.
Is that the final slide, or there's one more?
Yes, that is.
Samantha,
that's the last one.
Samantha, you're only 18 years old. I remember when I was 18, I remember scratching my head and knowing what the hell am I going to do with my life and all of that stuff. And you obviously already figured it out as earlier than 18, obviously, because you were already preparing to get into an Ivy League university. Was it your dad who put you to this, or what is it? What was it about you and being there in the United States that sort of made you hyper focus on getting into a good university? I mean, like, what happened to the other things that usually distract us when we're at that age? You go ahead.
Yeah, so I definitely do like have fun from time to time, but it's very important for me to, get into a good school and do a lot with my life. Because, since I was little, both my mom and my dad immigrated from the Philippines to come here, and they did that for more opportunities for me. So I think it would be a shame if I didn't take advantage of every single opportunity I could. I'm gonna take as much as I can from the country that my dad, what is he climbed mountains and he crossed oceans and he swam across rivers to be here. And so I think it's super, super important. I have such a privilege in being here, and I went to great schools growing up. My dad moved us to a different school district just so that I could go to great schools and be surrounded by these people that pushed me to do more. And I think it's so important, especially for us as Filipinos, to not limit ourselves. I think that we are all so smart, and there's so much potential in our community that's just like being left. And I think as scary as it is to take risks, and as much hard work as it is to, follow your dreams, I think it's very, very important for us as a community to make that our goal.
Speaking of Filipino students, and you mentioned that we shouldn't limit ourselves and all of that stuff. What is it about Filipinos that we always excel in the United States when it comes to our education in the United States? I remember we had this conversation about someone who went to a good school here in Cebu, but her grades were quite pedestrian and all of that stuff. And when she migrated to the United States, she was like cum laude and all of that stuff. What is it about? Obviously, it's not just our educational system, because you, Samantha, never went to school here in the Philippines, right? Could it be a genetic?
Mm-hmm.
What is it about the Filipino that makes us excel in the United States? What do you think? What's your theory?
I don't know. It has to be genetic or something, right? Because there's just too many of us that are too good in this world,
Yeah.
that it can't be a coincidence.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's that grit, that Filipino spirit of just like, this has to get done, and so I'm going to do it. And I
Okay.
think that's something that's very common in our community. We want to do great things, and we're just like innately driven to be the best that we can possibly be, for not only ourselves, but I think for our families, for our community. I think one thing that I love so much about the Philippines compared to here is we're a lot less individualist over there. we do things for the good of ourselves, for the good of our family. Family's so
Community,
important
yeah.
to Filipinos, to our community. Yeah.
Mm.
And so I think maybe that's why. Maybe it's the feeling of not only doing good for yourself, but doing good for your people.
Yeah, because I think the main difference of our culture here in the Philippines and in the United States, correct me if I'm wrong, is we're more community driven. We're more tribal. We do things as a community, and in there in the United States, it's very individualistic. Is that a fair comparison?
Absolutely. I think I've noticed that a lot. And while I think it can serve to some people's benefit, I also think that it makes it a lot harder to just like succeed, when people are trying to tear each other down, trying to get to the top, when we can just uplift all of us and we can all get to the top together.
Wow, that's a beautiful way of looking at the world, right? And I would have said naive 5 years ago, but I think there is room for positivity in this quite negative world. Samantha, you have lived all your life in the United States, and obviously you're bound to do a lot of great things that will hopefully change the world. Um, and it is such a pity that you're not here in the Philippines, because we will not be able to benefit from your excellence and from your know-how and from your energy, right? I mean, like that's what we're trying to do here, but you're still physically in Las Vegas. So you're thousands of miles away from where we are now. Do you think there'll ever come a time when you'll use your expertise and know-how and help your fellow Filipinos here in the Philippines?
Yeah, hey, I mean, don't get me wrong, I live here in the States, but I think that that's what I'm trying to do here. It's about Filipinos here in the US, it's about Filipinos back home in the Philippines, it's about Filipinos anywhere else abroad. I think that our community has so much promise, and there's a lot to be like studied about our community, and there's a lot to learn about our community. And I actually hope to one day go back and work for a little bit in the Philippines, just because I think it's so important to stay strong to our roots no matter where we are in the world. And yeah, I definitely hope that after the end of all my school and all my studies, and after I get a great job and whatever, at the end of the day, I can die knowing that I made my community better.
You mentioned community. I think that's one of the most important parts of an immigrant, right? And you being a first generation American, your dad came there 20 years ago, I think, right? When in his 20s, and it's nice, it's good to have community. Tell us about the support group that you have aside from family. Like, is it difficult? Because that's really one of the scary parts of being an immigrant, right? There's a lot of unknowns, right? Tell me about how the Filipino community has helped you achieve all of these things that you have achieved in the United States.
So we're very lucky, and my parents moved to Las Vegas, which has an incredibly like huge Filipino community. We even have like our own like Filipino town here in Vegas. There's like a Jollibee on every block. Like there's a very big Filipino community here. And honestly, I think it's just through a lot of people, especially immigrants here in the States, talk about how they come here and they feel like a minority, right? They look around and nobody looks like them, nobody acts like them, nobody talks like them. But I never had that growing up. I had a lot of Filipino classmates who would, bring spam to school for lunch, bring hot dogs to school
Spam.
for
Okay,
lunch.
okay.
Yeah, right. They actually in high school, one of the freshmen, I was in student council, one of the freshmen that I was like mentoring and stuff, she used to call me ate. And so I think my experience won't be the same for a lot of Filipinos who move to the US because there's such a strong Filipino community here. But I don't think I ever felt like marginalized here. I always felt that I was just as good as anybody else living in the States. And I think being able to be around so many Filipinos and live in a city where it wasn't like different to be Filipino was so important to me growing up.
There is a growing sense that it is uh, quite challenging to be an immigrant now in the United States. What do you have to say about that? And should they be afraid?
Yeah, I honestly
That,
it's a
that's
very like
that's Queen Magic, by the way.
hi Kuya. Um, yeah, I think it's a very tumultuous time for immigrants. It's a very scary time for immigrants. I don't think that I think it's completely within reason to be afraid right now. And I don't think anybody can predict what's gonna happen these next few years or how this is all gonna play out. But I can say that I think now more than ever, it's important for us to, fight for each other and be there for each other. No matter what happens, I think, we just have to have each other's backs, and I think that's the most important thing.
And all the more that you need to talk to Samantha here so that you'll have your first attempt when you want to be able to get into an Ivy League in the United States. So, in terms of seasons, like, when does the process of applying for an Ivy League in the United States actually begin? Like, what month of the year is this?
Right, yeah, I'm not sure. I think the Philippine school is on a different calendar, but
Yeah.
here, our school year goes from like August to June.
Okay.
So you start thinking about applying the summer before your last year of high school. So that would be like June before your last year of high school. And
Okay.
then early applications are due in November, and then regular applications are due typically in like December or early January.
So, what's the first step? Like, for example, I am already about to graduate high school, and I want to be able to get into Brown University or the other Ivy Leagues in the United States. Like, what should my first step be, and when should I do it? Let's just say I'm a Filipino, or if not, a American citizen, Filipino American citizen, Philam. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, no matter who you are, I think your first step should be to create a list of the schools that you want to go to. Like I mentioned before, a good school is subjective, it
Okay.
changes, and it's dependent on who you are. So come up with the schools that you actually want to go to that you think based on, the size and like where it is and the academics, the schools that you would want to go to. And then from there, you should research different, like how to apply, what the requirements are for applying. Some schools you have to take certain classes to be able to apply to in high school. Um, and, I think, yeah, you want to look at the requirements, you want to look at the essays you have to write. And then I think after you've cataloged all of the schools you want to go to, you start asking for letters of recommendation because those always take forever. Um, but yeah, I think it's so different here between different schools in the US. So it's important to know exactly what the school you want to go to requires. There's no general rule.
So, you obviously already knew what you wanted in life, and that's why you picked Brown University, right? Like, for somebody who just wants to get into a Ivy League or a good school, uh, um, is there like a step that they need to take so that they'll be able to understand exactly what it is that they want? What if all they wanted to do was just to be in an Ivy League school and nothing specific like you?
Yeah, I think a lot of people share that common experience of not really knowing what they want to do with their life. I think it's insane
Yeah.
to ask, 18-year-olds
Yeah.
to tell you what they want to do for the
Are,
rest
are
of
you
their
saying
life
are
and they
you
haven't
saying are
even
you saying
lived.
that you're insane, Samantha?
Just a little bit, just a tad.
Just a tad. Okay.
Um, but I think you don't have to know what you want to do in life. You don't have to know where you're going. But if you have a general idea of what you enjoy doing, that's guidance enough. Because you don't want to pick a career like you, Tito. I'm sure you like doing this and that's why you do it, right?
Exactly.
Right. So I think figure out what your passions are and start from there is the advice that I would give.
Figure out what your passions are, and then take it from there, right? There is a growing sense of, at least there's some pockets of the world that are saying that, like, it's very frivolous to follow your passions because you've got to try to make money first and then follow your passions after, right? What are your thoughts on that kind of resistance to following your passions and just figure out where you can make money first, and then it'll fund your passions kind of sense?
Yeah, that's a very common thought process, I feel
Mm.
like, especially among like Filipinos,
Yeah,
because it's like I need food on the table, I need a roof over my head. How
yeah,
am I going to follow my passions when I don't have those
yeah.
things? And I think that's very important, but I also think that there's kind of a gray area where you can find a way to monetize your passions. Like, for example, I have a lot of friends who love music. They grew up wanting to be a dancer, or a singer, or whatever, and they wish that they could like be on a stage and perform in concerts. And they knew that that wasn't the most realistic option, and they could always pursue that in the future. But for the short term, they're going into like music managing, and managing those businesses and kind of those things, so that they're still in the industry. They still get to pursue their passions in a way, but it's in a way that's a little bit safer to monetize and things like that.
So you are within arm's reach of what you want to accomplish, but at the same time, making a living off of the thing that you want to hopefully be able to accomplish in the future, right? So that's what you're saying. That's your
Yeah,
recommendation.
absolutely.
Samantha, if they want to reach out to you right now, or in the next few days, if they've already made up their minds on what they want to do, and they like to have an ate to teach them what to do when they want to get into a Ivy League university in the United States, where should they get in touch? How should they reach you? Go ahead.
Yeah, so they can contact me on Instagram, on Facebook. I have all of those things. Just look up Samantha Cerna, or SQ Cerna, SQCERNA. And then you could also reach out to me through email, sqcerna27@gmail.com. And through any of those ways, I promise I check my email very frequently. And I'm always on my phone, so I'll respond.
Always on your phone. Yeah. How about that
Absolutely.
challenge of trying to remove ourselves from our digital leeches, that is our cell phones? How's that working out for you? And what is your advice to those that are on their phones far too long than they should? What's your advice to people?
Oh, I don't know if I have any because I'm on my phone way too long, but I can say that I try to limit it as much as possible by, finding other things to do. Like
Okay.
if I have a free day, I will go hang out with my friends, or I'll go to
Okay.
the gym, or I'll do other things that make it easier for me to not just be on my phone all the time. That kind of distract me almost and redirect that like energy and that time I would have spent into
Mm.
something that's a little bit more productive for me, or
Okay.
even just fun, like watching a show, reading a book.
One of my common complaints, my fervent, constant complaints here in the Philippines and our educational system is, I've always complained about this forever, and I still don't have an answer now. And maybe you can help me. My biggest problem here in the Philippines, as far as I can remember, from the first day I went to a school until after graduation, is that I never had like a rock star teacher. I didn't have somebody who people would enroll to just to be, in close proximity of an enigmatic, charismatic, and very positive force in my school. Like we lack that. Like in your nation, in the United States, uh, did you have that, Samantha? And are you looking forward to a specific individual, a specific professor, perhaps, who you want to learn a great deal from?
Yeah, so I can share that sentiment for sure. I think especially in like high school, there was never really a teacher who taught any like academic subject that I was like super super excited to see every day or
Mm.
anything. But I will say that at Brown, one of the dean of the public health program, which is the program that I'm going to be in, is actually Dr. Jha, who led the COVID response here in the US after Dr. Fauci.
Oh wow,
If you're familiar with him, yeah.
yeah.
So I think it's going to be very exciting to just even be in the same like building as somebody who is so knowledgeable about the field.
Healthcare. You mentioned healthcare. I mean, like, that's one of the our biggest problems here in the Philippines. Healthcare is very expensive, and maybe I can ask you to help figure out how to get out of this healthcare problem here in the Philippines one of these days. But you also have a kind of healthcare problem up there in the United States, right? I mean, like you're the richest and most progressive country in the world, but yet your healthcare is not at par with lesser nations, if you will. So, what do you think is wrong with healthcare in the United States?
Yeah, well, I've actually done a lot of like research and studied a lot on
Exactly. That's why
this.
I'm asking
It's
you.
something that yeah,
Yeah,
it's something that was super interesting to
yeah.
me, like all throughout high school. And I honestly think that it's just so complicated over here, like with insurance and everything. And there's so many like different ways to pay for your healthcare that it it needs to be more streamlined. And I think personally, if I were the president of the United States, which I'm nowhere near being, I would love a more publicly funded system where people like taxes went to funding healthcare and people could get that healthcare for close to nothing. Because I think that it's crazy to say that healthcare isn't a right to people, that people don't have a right to be treated for illnesses, no matter where they come from, no matter who they are. Just like how doctors and nurses are compelled to help people regardless of their background. I think that the nation and our government should also be compelled to help people regardless of their background. Um, and that's what they do in a lot of other countries, and it's worked out pretty well for them. And it actually is cheaper for us than paying for insurance and copays and things like that because it's all just one streamlined system, and it cuts down on a lot of the administrative costs and things like that. So that's what I would do in my personal opinion. But ask me again in another 4 years, and maybe I'll have a different answer for
They're
you.
saying that it's because of the privatization of healthcare. That's why it's very expensive there.
Yeah. Um, it's it's hard when you're trying to help people and treat them, but also trying to make a profit off of them at the same time.
Yeah.
There can be definitely like a conflict of interest there in running hospitals and clinics and things like that.
Okay, so maybe in the next 4 years you'll be able to solve the healthcare problem in the United States. And I'm going to bring you over here to the Philippines and also help solve ours here.
Oh, I hope so.
My goodness, it's been very interesting conversation, and I'm sure this is helpful to a lot of people. Please, guys, if it's okay with you, Samantha, we're going to post your slides on our socials, if it's okay with you, so it can be an available resource for those who are thinking of getting to an Ivy League in the United States in the future. So, if it's okay with you, is that okay with you?
Absolutely. I'd love that. And that's my whole point of being on here and sharing all this information is I learned so much and I just want to share with other people and make sure they know about it too.
So, if you want to get into an Ivy League university in the United States, please get in touch with Samantha Cerna. Again, Samantha, where can they find you? Go ahead.
Yeah, at my email, sqcerna27@gmail.com, or my Instagram, sqcerna. That'd be perfect.
Okay, this is not a business of Samantha. This is her advocacy, right? So it's gonna cost you like close to zero, a fraction of the cost that you would have to spend if you applied for a university, an Ivy League university in the United States. So atong mga kaigsuonan, mga Cebuano, mga atong mga silingan diri sa siyudad sa Sugbo, atong mga kaamigo diri sa Pilipinas, if you want to try to get into an Ivy League school like how she did it, please, which is at Brown University, get in touch with her, or you can message us here on our social media platforms, and I'll make sure that this reaches Samantha right away. Samantha, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us, and I'm sure there will be more questions from our listeners, from our viewers, and I hope I can still talk to you about certain specific issues about how to get into an Ivy League university in the United States in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Tito. I love doing this kind of thing, and I'm so excited to be able to have enough knowledge to share with everybody. And I haven't cracked the code, but I came pretty close to it.
Yeah, so pretty close is close enough. Thank you so much, Samantha. Ladies and gentlemen, Samantha Cerna on how to crack the code, how she cracked the code of getting into an Ivy League school in the United States. Or at least she got close to it. Thank you, Samantha.
Thank you so much.
And say hi to your dad for me.
Yes, I will. Say hi
Okay.
to everybody over there for me.
Thank you. Lots of love here from Cebu, Philippines to Las Vegas. Thank you so much. You take care now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, Samantha Cerna on how to crack or how to get into an Ivy League university in the United States at the fraction of the cost. She was able to get to Brown University at a fraction of the cost. It usually costs like $10,000 to get into Brown University or other Ivy League universities in the United States. But nabuhat niya for less than $100 or 5,000 pesos. She got into the first step, which is of course getting into the Ivy League. And muli ako na mo yung mga pangutana, just feel free to get in touch with us. Tops Media Center on YouTube, topsmediacenter.com on our website, on TikTok, Tops Media Center, and join us in our conversation about this specific topic or our other conversations, okay? Our topic for today, of course, is how to get into an Ivy League university at half the cost. Of course, I'm talking about an Ivy League university in the United States. So please get in touch with us and our socials. Speaking of Samantha, here's a song for you, Samantha. This one is from the Kings. And guess what the song is called? It's called Samantha.
Samantha